is Clara Towson, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
I am Francisca George, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Susan Leemans, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom. Yeah.
My name is Zainab Summers, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hey guys, my name is Sasha Vickery, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Hi, my name is Lloyd Harris, and I'm a friend of the show.
Perfect.
Hi, my name is Jan Faria, and I'm a friend of the show.
Boom.
Yes.
Take one. Well done.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Paolini, and I'm a friend of the show.
Wow, Jasmine, you got it in one time.
Ready? Play.
Yo. ATP Weekly is back. I think 2 weeks, of course, because we haven't done an episode during the Australian Open, but we definitely did have a lot here. Interesting question already there in the chat from Kalefa168. We definitely will touch on this conversation as a whole, like whether Zverev can still win a slam. You've got 3 huge questions in the headline, in the thumbnail. I think we should just start from the beginning, though, which is actually what we saw today. So, of course, Jannik Sinner ended up beating Alexander Zverev in 3 sets. And let's maybe start from kind of the micro stuff, as in the match. And then we will move on to the big picture things. So, yeah, Mario, I mean, did you enjoy the final? What are your takes on it? What did Zverev do wrong? What was Sinner just unplayable?
I mean, this is not the match I was expecting, actually, because, we know a lot what we said about, Zverev's, let's say, maybe issue in Grand Slam finals, but actually, the first 2, he still was very, in one very close to win, in another one still, arguably pretty close, at least one set away. And, the history of this rivalry, and I know that, of course, Sinner has improved a lot since most of the matches they have played. And even in Cincinnati, it was still a Jannik Sinner who was kind of growing up in terms of level towards the form he has then built. But yeah, I still was not really expecting, such a lopsided final, despite, let's say that probably the only, moment is that towards the end of the second set, Zverev was looking slightly the better player in that moment, just around those 20 minutes, when Sinner had a couple of 30-all situations when he was serving to stay in the set. Sinner was probably playing a little bit too much on Zverev's backhand, but it was even okay because, it's not like we know that Zverev's forehand breaks down a lot, but at least under pressure. But, it's still not like you can just hit every single shot to his forehand. But, Zverev was starting moving the Jannik pretty well with the backhand in that moment in the second set. But yeah, overall, he, hasn't been a final we will remember forever in terms of, the chances and the opportunities, because it's just been pretty straightforward. And yeah, I mean, actually, I was thinking about a lot of comparisons between this Jannik run and that Novak had in 2023, because there are sort of many similarities, at least in terms of, how more or less the things went. And yeah, I mean, talking about what Zverev has done wrong, well, I mean, he hasn't been, I think, he said he's working a lot on, for example, his forehand, but today, he, let's say, 4 or 5 good forehands overall in the whole match, more or less. It was pretty bad performance for him from that side. I guess, this time he has probably felt some sort of different pressure, not pressure like in these first 2 finals when it was more about the kind of fear in the moment where he was getting closer to win it. But, Jannik saw that there was an opportunity from that side of the court, and, Zverev just has missed a lot from that side. And even when he was trying to attack, we know that a lot about him, but his transition game was not good at all, at least against a player like Sinner. Many approaches where Sinner could have hit some sort of easy passing shot, or at least make Zverev hit an uncomfortable volley. And so I was expecting a little bit of trouble for Sinner in this one. Even if he was the favorite, he's been the one who had already lifted those trophies before. So, but yeah, I still think, it's not like Zverev has done one particular thing in a bad way, but overall his whole game was not clear, not precise. Everything was sort of a little bit off, and especially on the forehand side, as we actually have seen quite a few times by him in the past as well.
I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit more less harsh on this Zverev performance. I know someone during the final tweeted at me that he's at minus 17 winners to unforced errors ratio. I mean, he's at that sort of ratio because Jannik is that good on the defense and he can't hit through him. I think he was he was trying to hunt these forehand down the line opportunities. Was it perfect? No, but I think it was still pretty decent for a Zverev performance. Volleying was not amazing, definitely not, but we also can't expect, someone who has never been into the net his entire life to suddenly become Roger Federer there. I mean, it's just not going to happen. Was it a dual final, though? Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I was expecting something bigger, something better, maybe, a slog that he can really get Jannik into. He couldn't, especially because he just wasn't able to break him. I mean, the serving was just far too good for the most part. Of course, as you mentioned, there were these two games where 4-5, it's a low 30. But then again, by that point, so 4-5, low 30 in the second set, and still Zverev hasn't won a single point on Jannik's first serve in the second set. So it's also kind of hard to break from that position if Jannik then finds 3 or 4 consecutive first serves. The next game, of course, there's that 30-all point, which is kind of one of the legendary ones from this final, the only maybe legendary point from this final, when Zverev does most things right. Definitely, he is aggressive, he goes for that forehand line, he defends himself after the Jannik lob, goes to the net. The first volley, I think, is very fine. The second, just the reaction doesn't exactly go too great, but Sinner is just unstoppable again. Can't beat him in that point. And then there's the net court, of course, as well, which comes at 4-all in the tie break, comes in as a mini break. And from that point, I mean, you kind of know that the match is done. I think Zverev today said after the final that at this point, Jannik is a better player than me. The only thing I have is I serve better than him. Do you? I'm not sure you do, actually.
Let's say that he's right when you talk, just about the quantity, how many, for example, are returns, aces. But then again, as you mentioned, Jannik's ability of being clutch also with his serve, lot 30, 4-5, lot 30 in the second set. Actually, Zverev hasn't returned any of the following 3 first serves, and then Jannik is 40-30 up in a few seconds. So I agree with you about the serve, because we know that in tennis not every point counts the same. So you may have 2, 3, I don't know, more aces, for example. He actually served quite well in the first set. He served very well when he was in trouble, until then Jannik broke. On the first 4 or 5 break points, I think he served very well, Zverev. But then again, Sinner, there may be moments where he kind of misses a few first serves, but actually when it matters, it's rare to see him not serving well. At least that's what he did today. About being harsh on Zverev, I was, being a bit harsh just because, I was talking, giving a little bit for granted the fact that if you have a challenge like Sinner on hardcourt in a Grand Slam final, then you have, of course, to bring, that sort of level that, he didn't bring that special thing that he would have needed, in order to get in close to the win.
That's not wrong. I mean, definitely. I think when it comes to Zverev, I don't think he showed anything special. I think just played exactly what we can expect from him. Like literally, this was, the state of the Zverev game that we know of. We saw it in the final. Did he choke? I don't think so. I think this is literally just what his tennis quality is. And we still, since that US Open 2020, we haven't really had like many major instances of Zverev choking in a Grand Slam final, because we've only had him playing twice, and he played Sinner and Alcaraz. Why is it framed as dominance, Ghosty? I mean, look at the hardcourt slams: Australia, US Open, and Australia, and especially the last two. And there's like zero interesting matches that Jannik Sinner played during these two events, and it's not his fault. And actually, let's talk about that. Is the Sinner domination boring? I think domination is by definition kind of boring, because if you're entering a match and you're thinking, okay, so like literally there's no chance that the other player wins, and then that actually is on the court, like that actually shows itself, then yeah, I mean, why would I even watch? Like I honestly mostly missed the Sinner run. Like, I don't know, do you watch the matches against Marcos Giron?
I only watched the last two
I'm not
matches.
gonna waste that. Oh yeah, I watched the one against Rune. I watched the one against Rune. The Minaur, yeah, I didn't see that either. I mean, why would I? And it's kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like this. So basically, maybe the question, and Sally is talking about it too. I'm gonna phrase this question to you, Mario, like this: Which was the worst final? This one or the US Open 24 against Taylor Fritz? Taylor Fritz at least broke Jannik twice, and Zverev never even generated a breakpoint, which is insane. By the way, just 3 finals like this century, and Mark Philippoussis and Kevin Anderson were the other guys. So that already kind of shows you, much more serve-oriented than Zverev.
I still think the US Open one is the one I have enjoyed the least between the two. I know that Fritz broke Jannik, I think, twice in that match, and actually was up a break in the third. But still, I felt like at least in this final, probably the overall quality, at least of Jannik's performance, was better. I don't think that at the US Open he played as well as he has done today. Sinner. So probably, if we consider both sort of lopsided finals, still probably I have enjoyed this one a bit more, because, I felt like, at least talking about Sinner's performance, this was, even better than that one.
What are you talking about, Ghosty? It's not important how long the dominance is. It's just important if it is dominance or not. Like, you can dominate one tournament and it's already dominance. It doesn't matter if you're doing this for 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, 37-1 in the last 38 matches, and it's basically all the last 10 matches he played against top 10 player have been straight sets wins for him, with just 2 tiebreaks. So, I think it's dominance is kind of the right word, without talking about now the Grand Slam race and everything. If we talk about the past, I think 6 months, 5 months, I don't know. I think it's been, dominance, yeah.
Well, also, by the way, there was a stat today that came up about like this being the first time that a top 10 player, that someone won 10 matches in a row against top 10 players in straight sets. I think that's wrong. McEnroe actually did it in 84. I don't know what happened there. But anyway, that's, I guess, not the most important right now. Sinner domination, boring. We kind of covered that. I'll just give my take. I actually enjoyed this final a bit more than the one against Fritz. I don't know, like, here, at least I had some sort of expectations and like intrigue because of the head-to-head, because Zverev is simply like the guy that over the past year or so we were thinking, okay, he might trouble Sinner. He might trouble Alcaraz. Alcaraz, it's kind of been happening depending on the conditions, whereas with Sinner, we only had 1 match between them since the explosion of Jannik. But still, that was super close. So there was a part of me was thinking, it might it might be better. It might be better than what it probably will be. And of course, the second set, I mean, maybe Zverev takes that. Maybe we have a completely different match.
Yeah,
but against Fritz, I just entered thinking, okay, yeah, this is done. I mean, just give him the title. But well, why are we talking about The Departed? But obviously, yes. I mean, who hasn't watched that? Either way, let's say when it comes to Yannick, what did I want to talk about? Yeah, I mean, were there any like tough obstacles along his route? You know, the U.S. Open, he only dropped 2 sets as well, right? Just like here. So I guess the only real obstacle on the Sinner route was injuries, like physical issues.
The break point he faced against Rune, probably. That famous rally, you know. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, you know. It's been just, you know, flawless runs. Actually, never pushed to a fifth set in both these Grand Slams. Then that was the ATP finals, and you know, he won all the matches in straight sets in a tournament that usually you tend to think, you know, there may be, you know, many tough matches, because there are, of course, only the top 8 players, top 9 this year, but whatever. So I mean, I get what you say about the obstacles. You know, it kind of feels like inevitable, especially because he also has, at least that's what he has shown, you know, this incredible problem-solving ability. You know, even against Shelton, a set that he probably had no business, you know, no right of winning. He, you know, just manages then to enter another level on return. Then maybe okay, Shelton also maybe not as clutch as it could have been, probably, but whatever, you know what I mean. You also enter a lot of matches and there's like 40-45 minutes where the other player does incredibly well. At least you watch him and you think like, you know, that's good level, this is what he has to do. For example, the slices, when it comes to Shelton in the first set, Yannick was missing a lot after those slices, but then again, you know, it doesn't really translate then into the result, you know. So you know, I think inevitable is kind of the right word right now to just think about his wall, you know, run over the past 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, we've kind of covered Zverev and Sinner, so let's talk about that other question we have in the headline. So, will Zverev win a slam? I mean, how much does this event change your opinion regarding the future chances of Alexander Zverev in terms of winning a first Grand Slam? And also, yeah, I mean, whether this actually yeah, sorry, I'm losing my mind today. I don't even remember what I wanted to say. But yeah, basically that's my question. Whether this final impacts them positively or negatively, this run as a whole.
I don't know. There are many things to take into consideration. Actually, you know, it's a thing that can go in different ways regarding of, you know, how he takes it. Of course, you know, it's a different final compared to the first two, because in the first two, you know, you probably exit the match thinking like, you know, more about the regrets or what I could have done different, you know, in that moment where I was close to winning and everything. Probably this is a little bit more, you know, not as harsh in terms of the score, in terms of how close have you felt to it, but probably a bit harsh in terms of, you know, getting some sort of reality check, you know, talking about the distance that there is between yourself and that player in that big match on this surface, which is actually a surface where you know, we have 2 out of 4 Grand Slams. So, you know, to be this far from a player on, at least, you know, that's what this match shown. Probably if they play this match other 5 times, probably maybe doesn't always end 3-0 for Sinner, but you know what I mean. And so I guess, you know, you can take it in a couple of different, you know, ways. You can get thrown down by this sort of, let's say, beat down, you know, that he suffered today, or you can take it, you know, positively, just get back to work and, you know, think like there may be other opportunities for me if I, you know, if I keep being in the mix. You know, I think that's what he has done very well over the past couple of years. Since returning from the ankle injury, we saw the the guys like Sinner, Alcaraz taking over, so this generational change. There are players who started suffering a lot in terms also of ranking, consistency, results week in, week out. Zverev has had, this ability to stay there in terms of, being in the mix, being one of the top seeds, always in the slams, being up in the ranking, being also in a couple of finals, actually 2 out of the past 4 Grand Slams. So, I mean, probably there will be another opportunity in terms of him being in a final. I don't know. Or French Open has always been very consistent. Semi-final in 21, 22, 23, the final last year. So, I mean, it's a tough question for sure. Will Zverev win a slam? It doesn't give, I think, right vibes, especially after a match like today. But still, you never know if, he may be another final. On clay, the gap is closer to Sinner.
Obviously.
Should be, considering that, I mean, Sinner may not be as unplayable as maybe he is on hard courts. But still, then you have to win these big matches, And for example, in terms of, pure level, probably last year against Alcaraz, the difference was not that big on the court in that final. But then again, you go up 2-1, and then Carlos has another gear in, placing your hands to the trophy, while Zverev hasn't been able to do it. So it's a bit difficult as a question. But if he stays in the mix, there may be, of course, another opportunity.
Yeah, some good points as well in the chat. I mean, first of all, he can't be losing to Taylor Fritz in 3 consecutive big events. Like, that's just, like literally Zverev's job from here is to beat everybody else but Sinner and Alcaraz and hope that things just align right, whether it's one of like an off performance from one of these guys, or maybe he just doesn't face them, which obviously can happen as well. Although, of course, Sinner and Alcaraz have now won the last 5 slams.
Because so let's say that in this slam, more or less, the stars kind of aligned in terms of, you got Djokovic and Alcaraz facing each other in quarterfinals, so one of them is out. Djokovic is injured and manages to win anyway. And so Carlos is out. Djokovic is injured. You face him in the semifinal. And, so he had, let's say, a little bit of help. Not saying that he didn't deserve to be in the final, but you know what I mean, in terms of this stars aligning that we were talking about. But still, you need to win at least, I think, one of these big matches if you want to win a Grand Slam. Then I don't know, maybe it can happen in the future that something happens and both are out, you don't face any of them, but still, let's see.
Yeah, I mean, of course, Zverev, when it comes to this slam, like we said that Yannick didn't really have any interesting matches on the way to the final, and Zverev didn't either. The first 2 sets against Tommy Paul, like he should have lost them, but after he wins that, the match just goes, once again into that like mode where you are basically almost afraid to watch. First few rounds for Zverev, again, there was no point really. He plays Pedro Martinez. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm not really going to follow that and think, oh, is Pedro beating him here? Probably not. Well, he lost a set to Gombert, but again, yeah, and I think that the Zverev run to the final was really easy, mostly owing to that Djokovic retirement. So in a way, some stars aligned, just not in the way that he needed them to. So yeah, I mean, Sinner Alcaraz to be out, and then there's a shot. But again, he cannot like start bringing up new people that he's going to be losing to all the time, like Taylor Fritz. Like, yeah, just losing to Taylor in 2 consecutive slams is just insane. One-handed Wawrinka backhand, Magnus Norman as a coach, and then he's winning Roland Garros at 35. Yeah, go for it.
I mean, a little bit of a harsh stat is that he is 113 against top 5 players in Grand Slams. I don't know what this exactly tells us, but I think, if it cannot be a coincidence when you have a sample of 14 matches played over the course of now, let's say, a career that has, lasted a decade. So, it's a bit tough because when you talk about, it's weird actually to see a career that, if we talk about the best of 3 sets performance, I mean, I know that in Masters 1000 tournaments, Olympic, there are always more opportunities because, there are also, maybe not all the top players get to play, meaning that one is likely injured and misses that Masters. But still, the gap between his performances in, tour level tournament, let's say the other tournament and the Grand Slams.
Well, Mario, but did he play Alcaraz or Sinner in Rome? Did he play Alcaraz or Sinner in Paris?
No. Actually, that's right. But I was talking since sort of the beginning of his career that there is this sort of story, beating Djokovic there, losing to him at the Australian Open, beating Nadal in that tournament, losing to him, I don't know, in a Grand Slam.
No, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like back in the day, it definitely used to be a thing. Like he used to beat Djokovic to win an ATP 1000 and then lose to him in a Grand Slam. Right now, I mean, yeah, last year 2 ATP 1000s, but they weren't like strong draws, really. At least not the parts where he was. Tsitsipas, I guess, was his biggest rival in Paris, right? Or am I forgetting about somebody? I think it was
the 21 semi-final.
And then Rome, I don't even remember anybody he played that was like really tough. So yeah, I don't think, yeah, again, I guess that's still like his job will be to simply be that consistent dude. Like the the last year or so, right? He's just number 2 in the rankings because he's super consistent. Like he plays 20 more events than 20 is a stretch, but like 15 more events than Alcaraz. Maybe that's a stretch too. 10 more events than Alcaraz, and he simply overtakes him in the rankings. So like that's kind of his job now, to be the best of the rest, and then maybe he's still gonna have chances or not. I don't really know if I want to, Jake. I mean, we talked about him a bit on the stream earlier today. I don't feel the need to, or maybe I probably don't feel the need to. Well, let's talk about some of the other guys here. So Novak Djokovic, of course, got to the semifinals, earned the win over Carlos Alcaraz. I guess the two biggest questions here are like, yeah, what do we think based on this run? Like, what are his chances of winning a slam from here? Plus, also, how much do you rate that Alcaraz win? Like, how much do you think that was a performance that like shows Djokovic still has it at the age of 37?
For me, it was an unbelievable performance in the context of the match. But I don't know if it really, tells me that much. I actually think like, if we think about it, it's 3 out of the last 4 Grand Slams that he has been dealing with some sort of injury. French Open, and there was the knee issue and he had to pull out before the quarterfinal. Wimbledon, he manages to still get on a run despite not moving that well with the knee issue, but then he faces Alcaraz in the final, and I don't know, probably could have lost, of course, that final anyway, but how lopsided, especially the first 2 sets, where I think also for sure there was a talk about the injury throughout the whole tournament, and then of course at the Australian Open once again. So we enter a stage of his career where it's also difficult to predict, because he's still way better to most players on tour. He faces 2 straight top 30 players in round 3 and 4 and doesn't drop any set. And then against, Alcaraz, he still does something great in managing, to still adjusting to the physical issue and also getting into Alcaraz's mind a little bit, because, I felt he's been also very good in doing that in the match, and, changing the tactic, because now, his serve also is a big weapon, or can be, and, the ability to come to the net way more often, and all these things that, can help him also to compete with these players. But overall, it still feels like, as we said before, there is some sort of star aligning thing that now he needs probably to win another Grand Slam. His level is still very good if we compare, of course, to the average players, and most of the guys on tour, even top 20 players. But, talking about winning that major, it becomes difficult. I mean, the physical situation is definitely not as good as it used to be even a couple of years ago.
Jack Nicholson on our screens, but I am actually going to talk about Novak Djokovic, who's only slightly younger. But when it comes to Novak, yeah, I think the Mahach-Lehečka performances, they were definitely very strong. Like, these were matches that before the events, we were thinking, yeah, like, this is probably going to be tough. This is part of why the Djokovic draw looks undoable, because by the time he even reaches, like, not doable, because even when he reaches Alcaraz, he might as well be, like, after 2 tough battles. But actually, he wasn't. The Carlos win, I don't know. I mean, I've spoken about it a few times on the show already. Alcaraz clearly is like Djokovic is very much in Alcaraz's head. That's clear. Was it still a great effort to kind of like stick around in that 4th set despite being, almost close to getting broken back many times? Sure. Was he, as usual, returning great? Absolutely. Was he a wall of the baseline in the night conditions? Yes. I still think that's a match that like Alcaraz at this point of his career should be winning, but basically has other issues that aren't really allowing him to. But yeah, I guess Djokovic is kind of in the Zverev boat right now, in that some stars have to align for him. At least he has 24 slams, and Zverev has none. So his position, I would take his position.
Yeah, definitely. And he's 37, so.
Even if he's 37, yeah, I'm definitely taking his position rather than Zverev's.
Definitely.
However, yeah, that's kind of what we still feel, I think, after this slam, that, in order for him to win a Grand Slam from here, he kind of has to just get a decent draw and not really like wear himself out too much. The big question, I guess, is, what happens in 6 months, right? Roland Garros comes in 5. Yeah, I know. I'm still think that Wimbledon would be a better shot for him. So, at this stage of his career, 6 months, 5 months, it's kind of like a year. It just basically extends, because the physical decline will obviously be hitting him harder and harder as the years progress. But at least he keeps himself in there with this performance. Like, I think he definitely keeps himself in terms of just his interests too, because I think we've said that many times, but also he has already stated that, like, as long as he feels competitive against the young guys, so essentially Sinner, Alcaraz, like, that's how long he will have the motivation to play. And with this slam, there's definitely, it's not a no answer, definitely not. Like, he hasn't shown that he's not going to be competitive against her. He obviously against them. He obviously beat one of these guys, also lost with an injury rather than, in an actual like fair contest. So I think it's definitely enough to keep him going, and we'll see what he can come up with from here. Of course, it's the kind of like the adjusted version of his game over the years. Yeah, I mean, in terms of like intelligence, he's still fantastic on the court. And I think it's especially funny that Alcaraz in the Sinner matchup looks like the best tactician of all time, whereas against Djokovic, he just looks like the worst tactician of all time. And that's also because Novak is simply, has so much experience and has so much ability to understand what's happening on the tennis court. There was an interesting question there earlier about who was going to be the next maiden major winner. We might not even get one this year, but I guess the first guy in the conversation is still Zverev.
Yeah, it feels tough right now to say another name if we have to think at this year, because, are there players who are ready, to, or at least more likely than him? I don't think so. So I still would go, for Zverev, considering, the current landscape.
Yeah, sorry. No to Casper Ruud, no to Giovanni Pericard. I'm sorry. But yeah, the current landscape is Zverev. Maybe someone like even much bigger in a couple of years. Ruud to win Wimbledon. I like that. Yeah. If it changes surfaces to clay, because suddenly there's like a flood in London or something like that, and they have to move it, and they move it to a clay court, which is obviously not in the UK anymore, because famously there's no clay courts in Great Britain. So probably they would move it to, like, I don't know, Copenhagen, and then we've got a Rune Ruud final, which is the Scandinavia derby. Either way, that's probably kind of it regarding Novak here. Let's talk about also actually Carlos Alcaraz, who lost to Novak.
Yeah.
And I mean, are there even any like positives to take from this event for Alcaraz? Because I feel like, if you compare this to the 2024 exit to Zverev, Sure, there was this one good serving performance for Alcaraz against Nishioka, but then obviously when he it's normal, right, that when you tweak something about your motions and then there's a match where there's a lot of pressure, you're gonna revert to the old stuff. That's entirely normal. But his serving against Djokovic was obviously quite poor, just no spots whatsoever. And yeah, as a whole, I just don't feel like there's literally like one thing that Alcaraz can leave Australia thinking, oh yeah, I did that right, I improved on last year.
No, honestly not, but also because, of course, the bar for him is obviously incredibly high, meaning that, having won all these big titles already, of course, you either play incredibly well, even if you lose, but you still, play an unbelievable performance. I don't know, you lose 6-4 in the fifth or a tied 4-set against Sinner in the final, but playing quite well, and then it can be, a good exit for you. But this one, of course, the serve, as you mentioned, many mistakes, as you said also before, Djokovic a little bit or even more than a little bit in Alcaraz's head, because as we have seen at the Olympics and, at the Australian Open a few days ago. So, it's tough to talk about him because, of course, there is still a long journey this year, but just talking about the Australian Open, of course, it hasn't been a fantastic, run to remember for him.
Yeah, just a very tentative, nervous performance against Djokovic, which, as Novak's draw was going to be very tough to win the title, so was Carlos's. But given how he played against Novak, I'm not really confident that he would have pushed through Zverev as well and then beat Sinner in the final. I think the winner we got was kind of the only winner that we ever gonna get. I'm not sure I felt quite like that before the tournament began, but right now definitely it kind of looks to me like, regardless if it was Novak, Carlos, or Sasha, yeah, it was just gonna be that, definitely. Let's see. Yeah, actually, Shelton, we should move to him, definitely. Can't wait for grab the beer and popcorn. Okay, I'm actually gonna give the space to Mario first, though. Maybe Ben Shelton. I mean, second Grand Slam semifinal. All things considered, I mean, you gotta like this result, obviously, but it's kind of like, he hadn't beaten anybody, like, let's say, of note on the way to the semis, and then against Sinner, 11 games were cool. After that, yeah,
a good tournament overall, because when you reach a Grand Slam semifinal, your second one, equaling your best result at a Slam, it is for sure a very good tournament for you. Good for him that he has been able to use the opportunity. Also, of his draw opening up that section. And tennis is actually more or less about that, in using the opportunities that you have throughout your career. And he did it in terms of, winning his matches in a draw section that opened up after, the high seed Medvedev and Fritz lost. Not that it could have been impossible for him to win against them, but and for Sinner, talking about the Sinner match, he entered the court really well. He played well at the beginning of the match, the first set. I feel like he had a couple of ideas that have even worked out pretty well. But yeah, then again, Sinner being incredibly clutch and just playing unbelievable when it matters. He made the difference, while Shelton probably, but I mean, that was also his performance, try to hit a lot, using the slice, but then again, hitting forehand very strong, try to out hit Yannick. And this has been, both why he has been able to get that very tight first set, going toe-to-toe with Yannick, but also the reason why, the tactic was not very sustainable. So, I mean, I think, overall positives for him. But I mean, as you said, I don't think this tournament tells us a lot in terms of Ben Shelton.
Yeah, Gavin, it's sort of like revealing to us that he is definitely younger than John
I
Silk.
leave 2 minutes. I'll explain later.
Okay.
Sorry.
I was just going to say that Gavin is revealing to us that he is definitely younger than John, since John was definitely born when Alex Ferguson was signing up for United, and has even written a book called Even the Defeats. Anyway, this is not important right now. Shelton broke Sinner a couple of times. Yeah, I think Shelton is kind of similar to Zverev in the final in terms of that, like, if you look at his winner unforced error ratio against Yannick, it's going to be like complete trash. You're just going to think, oh, I mean, yeah, his baseline game is horrible. But it's actually not. I mean, he was just playing Sinner. Like, it's not really going to live up to Yannick's standards. But he should have won the opening set, and then from there maybe something happens. Ferd said he also doesn't really take advantage of the cramping that for a brief while was bothering Yannick. Actually, I think Yannick starts cramping and he wins like 11 points in a row. So yeah, he definitely did not take advantage. He had some early break points as well in that third set. But I hope that Ben can still take some confidence in his baseline game from this. And yeah, this was like a semi-final route that he definitely has to take. But at the same time, we've seen him waste this. He is a player who is like very serve return. The deficiencies in his return are very much counteracted by, of course, how well he serves. But it does kind of lead to lottery matches. And for him to step up here and make that semi, I think that's already pretty important. And yeah, I mean, there's definitely nothing like totally wrong you can say about this run. I just hope it leads to something and kind of like even a change of attitude maybe in his game, where he's not going to be forced to rely on just super aggressive, super risky plays anymore, but he can start developing that baseline game even further. There are some people who say that he's just unable to do it because his father is the coach and like kind of, maybe he has maxed out that. I don't know. I think these people are just kind of reading into stuff that they can't really know about. But it's a fair theory to kind of like put forward there that it might be the case, but we don't really have that there. Was it a tournament of Lerner Tien for me? Well, I mean, definitely the fourth round run was fun. It showed that, against guys who have like similar games, he can definitely like just make it fully on the tour. So like Medvedev, Mute, these guys who are also underpowered, and becomes like a chess match, and he's able to outplay them there. I think that was very impressive. At the same time, he goes 5 with Ugo Carabelli. So I think there's still a lot to test, but I don't know if it was a breakthrough. Well, I mean, it was a breakthrough for sure, but I don't know if the tournament in itself had that problem that the first week was amazing. And then after that, all the matches since the quarterfinals onwards are just like complete trash and nothing is even watchable. And I think I said during the week that like we basically are lacking one good match, and this is someone pushing Sinner. I don't care who it is. I don't care if Yannick wins, but someone has to push him to like 5 sets, and then we have a good event. But yeah, eventually we didn't, obviously. All right, and I think we have arrived there. We should probably talk about I kind of finished the Shelton topic, and then Nurlan brought up Lerner, but let's also talk about Alex de Minaur. There was this interesting conversation between him and Pavi G on Twitter, where Pavi was basically just saying that it was a worthless, horrible performance from Alex because he doesn't believe he can beat Yannick. So what's your kind of take on Alex de Minaur here? The fact that does anyone? But like the fact that he reached 4 consecutive Grand Slam quarterfinals, is he just gonna sort of go Rublev and go 0-10 in them?
I think he's been a bit unlucky with the fact that at the US Open he was still, re-entering from the injury, and at Wimbledon actually I thought he could have had a slight chance considering Novak was not moving well. So probably the two, let's say, biggest opportunities that he could have had.
I haven't seen that before. I'm sorry, but this is just too good. This is just too good, man. Yeah, I mean, Djokovic bravely went onto the court and fought hard for a set. And Alex de Minaur, yeah, what a shame. I mean, he withdrew. What a horrible person he is. Jesus.
And so, I mean, he can go maybe the way of Rublev. It's not that I would be unbelievably surprised if that happens, but still, let's say that at least in the first and the last one, I don't think he had any reasonable chance, because against Zverev on clay, it's very difficult that, he manages to beat him, especially out of 5 sets. And I mean, he actually hasn't won a set in Grand Slam quarterfinals.
0 and 12.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know really, because it's, it's kind of tough to predict what may happen in the future, meaning that if he gets into a section, maybe like the one Shelton was in this tournament, I see no reason why he couldn't have been in the semifinal. So once again, we are talking a lot about the stars aligning, and let's say that when the draw, I think we have already talked about this in the stream, about you told him having the most predictable tournament possible.
Yeah.
And I think that before the draw, that was the most likely scenario, because he was looking good. So he was, it was difficult to see him losing against his first 4 opponents, and he hasn't. And then against Sinner, I mean, especially, on that court, probably the best court of Sinner's career, probably at this point. It's very, very difficult. So, talking about this tournament, I cannot really say anything in regards about the Minaur, but, I think we could have easily, exchanged Shelton and the Minaur, and the Minaur would have probably made the semifinal. So let's see if an opportunity comes for him, finding himself in a section where he can, get out of that.
Yeah, shame he wasn't able to play at Wimbledon. Obviously, one of these quarterfinals. He's 0-5 in quarters now, but I mean, we can't really count the Djokovic loss.
Actually.
But yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. That like we can't really count the Djokovic loss. 0. That's why he's 0-12, not 0-15, because he withdrew. So well, he's made 5 quarterfinals, but only lost 4 times. But yeah, he hasn't taken a set in either of these losses. Chances, I guess Draper obviously stands out. But yeah, that's not really something we can also like blame him for. He was injured going into the US Open, and even making it to the quarterfinals was a big effort. So I think that's kind of how you have to look at that performance from that event. Whereas here, yeah, I mean, I see that Pavi was like very disappointed with Alex's performance, but I don't know. And I mean, especially in like slower,
more or less.
Yeah, I think especially in like slower night conditions, there's just nothing that the Minaur can do, because the quality, like the quality gap in terms of their shots just stands out too much. Alex maybe could sometime, I don't know, somehow beat Yannick if the court is quicker. Maybe he can attack a bit more, but I throw in a slice on grass or something like that. I don't know, maybe. Like it's still a long shot, but maybe. But I think when it's slower, it just becomes, obviously the Minaur isn't a top 10 player for the quality of his forehand and backhand. Like that's something he's worked over the years to improve, but they're never going to be Sinner-like. They're never going to be Zverev-like. They're never going to be Fritz-like. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I can say. Yeah, Alex bravely took the court versus Draper, didn't even retire, and Djokovic retired. All right. Any more like quarterfinalists, 4th rounders we should talk about?
I mean, I don't know what probably, Tommy Paul thought at night, especially after Djokovic retired. I know that Djokovic maybe wouldn't have retired. At least that's what he said, but still, given that he was injured, I mean, it's tough to look back then, even because I think, that people tend to think too much about the chances a player has in any set. But, for me, if you don't really get to winning a couple of sets and a few games in the third one, then you're not close to winning or, even to think about it. So I don't know. I mean, the second week has been actually unbelievably boring. I say it, as we have said, many times in this stream. So it doesn't really, nothing kind of stands up a lot. Of course, we've had, I think I saw Tien speak before. Of course, a big story in the first week has been the youngsters pulling a couple of upsets and playing very well, making moves, and then Sonego ending their hopes. But yeah, I mean, the second week has been probably, I'd say, the Shelton Sonego match has been probably the best one in terms of, I've enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I think Tommy Paul, obviously, as he said, he wasn't 2 sets to love up, but he did get to a position where he was basically almost like, yeah, he had the first set, he had the second set. We're not, this is maybe like, we're not going to remember this in 5 years. But Tommy Paul almost beat Alexander Zverev, Alexander Sinner, I wanted to say. No, that's a mashup. Anyway, we're not going to remember that a match like this ever got close. We're just going to remember Zverev 1-4. Like, that's it. Yeah. But yeah, if you look deeper into it, then yeah, Tommy obviously had real chances there. And Zverev was not looking great in that performance. Not at all. Matthew says that when can we realistically hope to see a challenge to Yannick outside of Carlos, because the current gen he owns? Maybe this is the key, Matthew. Maybe what you're saying. Maybe it's not the current gen, but maybe it's the next one. Maybe it's someone with a very similar playstyle like Fonseca, or maybe it's someone with a completely different game like Lerbertien. Who knows? I mean, we're not going to see it until these guys like properly develop. But obviously, neither of them has faced Yannick before.
Yeah, let's say that so far, probably, even if he's not more or less risking against anybody, but even if you look at, Minaur and, other players that maybe push him to a tiebreak, probably the different play style is, can trouble Yannick a little bit more rather than somebody who, doesn't play like he does. Unless, this player then plays also at Yannick's level with his play style. So I think we just have to wait a little bit. I think more or less, I don't know what was about Iga Swiatek in 22. Then the challenges came, and probably this will happen as well.
Yeah, maybe it's just a brief period that we're gonna kind of like have to wait out in a way, and other players will have to wait out as well. And then maybe that will happen. Well, we are almost arriving at about an hour. I think we have to give a brief preview as well to Montpellier and also the Davis Cup action that we have. Is there anything in particular that you're excited to follow about Montpellier? I saw that Jake was already mentioning in the chat earlier that there's going to be Wawrinka Cazaux tomorrow. And I think Wawrinka and Cazaux also play doubles at that event. So it's actually kind of spicy. Montpellier last year won by Bublik, but isn't he even in the draw? I don't think so, right?
I don't think so.
But Rublev took a wild card as a top 10 player, of course. I know Bublik is in the draw. Never mind.
Okay.
So yeah, anything in particular you're excited to follow there?
Look, just the fact that it's always when we talk about these tournaments, the smaller ones, and especially these smaller tournaments that happen, for example, the week after a Grand Slam, are, of course, at least that's how it feels, a big chance for everybody. So that's probably the most interesting thing also about this tournament. And we'll see also which storylines we will talk about, next week. There will also be the Davis Cup. And just, seeing who manages to use these opportunities. There are few players that will be very happy, to be back to winning ways. Even, for example, Andrei Rublev. I know that he's just a 250, but he hasn't been as consistent as he used to be in the past months. So probably winning a title can help him. But there are other guys who never won a title, like Koboli, who has a high seed. Or there is, of course, room for everybody, because there is no player who sort of looks unbeatable. We know that Geraliassim is usually very good in these conditions as well. So yeah, we'll see what this tournament brings to us. I was looking at the wild cards. Let's say nothing stands up too much. But yeah, I mean, it can be an interesting week, maybe more interesting than the Australian Open second week.
I think it probably will be, yeah. The Gasquet ceremony in Montpellier, I didn't know that was happening, but I mean, obviously, Richard is retiring at Roland Garros, but I think he's won the event a few times. So yeah, it would be pretty amazing if he was getting that. Ghosty is very right that there are still no blips on my patented prodigy radar tech with Lerner, I guess. Just like kind of, a solid tour guy. But obviously, I was aware of Lerner Tien before the Australian Open. I mean, there's no challenger tennis fan that would be not aware. I mean, first of all, Lerner was already 2022, he won Kalamazoo, so the under 18s national championship in the States. And he played Kecmanovic at the US Open, went 4 sets. And of course, 2023, he makes 2 Grand Slam finals in the juniors, one losing to Alexander Blocks and the other to Joao Fonseca. So, I mean, yeah, since the summer of 2022, it was kind of tough not to be aware of Lerner Tien. Vanch was aware of him since 2013, having seen him in the juniors in Southern California. Either way, yeah, very important Ghosty whether he outperformed him in one event, especially after Joao beat him twice at the next gen finals. Anyway, Gavin is probably right that every session will start with a minute's silence and the audience will be crying for Gasquet, both in Montpellier and Marseille. I actually had the pleasure to watch a Gasquet match in Marseille in 2020, and it was pretty crazy. He lost to Michael Immer in the opening round, 7-5 in the third. Would have played.
Immer won a title this week.
Survived. Immer, yeah, of course. Sorry, I was like, Gasquet won? But yeah, Michael Immer won in Esch Al Z today, his comeback event, M25 in Luxembourg. Also, Davis Cup is coming up next week, so that, of course, is taking a lot of the kind of roster you would usually find in Montpellier. Of course, it's the usual setups. You've got Group 1, World Group, Group 1, Group 2, and etc. Actually, World Group is not called World Group anymore. It's qualifying or something like that. But yeah, is there a specific Davis Cup tie that you really want to see this week?
I mean, now it looks pretty... it was already likely, but it looks pretty certain that, of course, Djokovic won't be there. And so, we could have had a high-profile matchup in these matches. But I mean, Davis Cup ties usually are always sort of interesting because, also the environment, the atmosphere that there is with the crowd, especially for, usually I'm very interested in these ties that feature nations for whom it would be, big qualifying to the following stage because it doesn't happen often, or because, it's a pretty small country, at least, historically in tennis. So, I feel like Davis Cup has always some sort of fashion, especially with the home and away ties. So, it will be curious to be watching the matches.
Yeah, Poland is playing Georgia, and well, I don't expect it to be particularly close. We did kind of screw ourselves up with the South Korea loss in September, which especially 0-3 there, that was not expected. But against Georgia, it should be easier. Of course, Basilashvili isn't involved. He hasn't played Davis Cup in years. And there are just these 4 guys, Bakshi, Metreveli, Purtseladze, and Kemaladze, who often travel together, but bearing an insane serving performance from Mr. Saba Purtseladze, I don't think there's really any danger there. I know it's not a serious question, but I kind of want to answer that now. I kind of want to see who Israel is playing, but also maybe the ones I am excited about. I mean, Brazil is going to be taking on France, and France is at home, and Fonseca, whom we just talked about, will be there. So that's kind of interesting. He's definitely going to play someone big there. I think Belgium also has an interesting match with Chile at home. I don't think Tabilo is involved, or actually no, Tabilo is also in the roster. Yeah, I think he's in the roster. So basically, it's the whole Chile lineup usually. And Belgium obviously have Blocks, who's just won an indoor title in Oeiras, so maybe he can produce something there. especially considering that he was, he pushed Berrettini last time he played Davis Cup. But yeah, otherwise, I also don't really know if I'm going to be like very directly following something. Israel is actually playing Germany and Lithuania, so they're not playing at home because of the war. But yeah, I mean, Germany still looks really strong here, despite not having Zverev. Obviously, they have Struff, Altmaier, they have Kravitz Putz, and Israel is like Zuckerman, Oliel, and the guys. So yeah, Leshem, I think, so probably not going to have any shot at winning that one. I think that's more or less it then. I mean, we covered most of the topics from the Australian Open. Jake said 10 minutes ago in the chat that he's going to go watch Daniel Elahi Galan. I'm also going to do that. The Punta del Este final is starting just now. He is facing Thomas Barrios Vera. Should be pretty interesting, although I actually did like the previous two finals a little bit better today. But we have to wrap up the Challenger week somehow. And yeah, any final thoughts?
No, just I wanted to say my performance hasn't been flawless, but because I'm struggling with stomach ache, so
Sorry,
you know,
Mario, but no, I mean you've been fine. I mean, don't worry. I mean, I didn't see.
You know, the
any
tournament
difference.
in itself didn't really help actually, because but still I felt like I was really off. So that's just what I wanted to say to.
Dudicella is not playing Gavin, unfortunately. One of the best challenger players of all time. But no, I mean, he kind of ended his career on a bit of a tough note, right? I mean, he was just picking up these protected ranking money at the slums. And, it's fine to do it. I mean, I would do it as well. But just kind of leaves a sour taste when you see Attila Balázs and Dudicella in a Grand Slam qualifying draw for the 10th time, whereas, it feels like they haven't played in 3 years. But yeah, anyway, that's kind of what I can say on that. Definitely no issues with your performance. I was kind of losing track of what I was saying at the very beginning, but then I also managed to survive. Swarna says that we were great. Thank you very much. I also loved your participation, Swarna, actually, because everybody was like throwing in tennis questions, and you're like, who is Alcaraz dating? Is Sinner still dating Kalinskaya?
All question that we are not the best people, I think.
I just ended up laughing both times. I think Sinner is still with Kalinskaya, but no idea about who Alcaraz is dating. I mean, my guess is he's probably not dating anybody. Although some people on the internet would tell you Emma Raducanu, but I think that's fun fiction for now. Maybe at some point though, we'll see. But yeah, the producer actually just disappeared. It's a shame you couldn't see him because his mustache is something special. It's like Jordan Thompson version 2.0. And I actually said, before even realizing how good it is, I said that it looks like a West Germany 80s gay bar. And, well, where does John live? In the former capital of West Germany. So that was actually, like some double encounter. I didn't even feel at the time. I didn't even know. Anyway, we were actually going to finish, and I see that the producer is back literally on the plane. So maybe he just wants to finish the stream. I don't know. But yeah, good luck for dating Eva Liz, Gavin. And I don't think he's in Bonn. I mean, he is on a plane. So there's no planes in Bonn as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, thank you guys, and see you.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.